I would flip it and see myself talking to me like, "Oh, you're a loser," or
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you would never let somebody speak to you like that and keep
Right.
that friendship. So why do we do it to ourselves? Why do
Yeah.
we beat ourselves? Because it becomes a mental prison you can't escape from.
Yeah, it's such a double standard, isn't it? And it's like this double standard that so many people can relate to, that we have different standards for how other people we would talk to other people, or how we'd even let other people talk to us, and then how we talk to ourselves. And I think that answer usually goes to our childhood. And I talk a lot about that too in my book and my writings, but we learn about who we are and how the world views us from our childhood. So our caregivers, our parents, our friends in school, our teachers, when we're young, we're like developing this blueprint for like who we are and what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are, and we're getting all this information from our environment. So if we were getting information or feedback about ourselves that we weren't good enough, or we had parents who were super critical, and so we felt like we could never be enough or do enough, or we had to do things to earn their love, or things like that, then we develop these scripts as kids that, unless we do work on them as adults, are very limiting and are pretty critical.
And will these scripts, will they kind of just keep coming back as the same kind of problems? Will we see the same, like they always say, you date the same kind of person until you learn the lesson from that? Will we always, will these continue until we deal with them? Is mindfulness the best approach at this point?
I think that we're pretty consistent, which is actually a good thing. You wouldn't want to be dealing with like 15 different scripts, like, oh no, now it's this one. Now, so usually we're pretty consistent. The stuff that we experience as childhood turns into this inner dialogue that we live with until we decide not to live with it anymore by looking at it and working through it in a very compassionate way. So mindfulness is a great starting point, just and that's what it was for me, and I witnessed that in clients that I work with, just in getting that awareness. Oh my gosh, how am I actually talking to myself? I write about this in my book, having this experience on a mindfulness retreat during a silent portion of that retreat, where and this was in my 20s. My 20s when I went on my first retreat. And so living all that time, and then I remember so clearly that moment where like, oh my gosh, I'm so harsh with myself. And it took a few silent days for me to really realize how constant that inner chatter was and how negative it was. So mindfulness can be a great starting point to gain that awareness. And also the reason why I love mindfulness is because it's learning to be present for what's unfolding within us. And the
Mhm.
second part of that is in a very compassionate, non-judging way, right? So it's not like, oh, now I'm negative about being negative. It's like, oh, wow, that's harsh. Oof. Okay. Like it's in a more compassionate way.
Because everybody says to journal, but I always find that as soon as you journal and you go, I'm like this, and then you go, okay, but it's because of this, and then you
Uh-huh.
start saying, I'm like that because of that. I'm going to hold out against that person because they did that in my childhood. So
Uh-huh.
it's almost like you want to apportion blame. Is journaling good, or are talking therapies better because we can at least get like methods and helpful like actions returned from you, like concrete action steps, rather than just going, blame your mother because she said that, blame your dad because they did that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. 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 And I think journaling is excellent. And I think therapy is excellent too. And I oftentimes give journaling as a homework exercise for the people that I'm working with, because I think it does just create the space for us to reflect and see what's going on in our minds, and a way of getting
mm,
it out of our bodies, because if we're not processing it, it's going to live somewhere inside of us. So, and also just to highlight, I think that there is a very big difference between blame and accountability.